Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Smash JT. Warning, warning, controversial topic inbound. Remember those glory days of being able to buy a used NES game at Funcoland for like 11 cents? Gone are those days, and they've been replaced with a far more expensive version of the hobby called modern day collecting, using eBay. Has eBay ruined the retro video game collecting scene? Well, yeah, let's talk about it. Granted, eBay does have a ton of benefits for actually existing, but I feel like eBay is kind of the ultimate double-edged sword when it comes to pros and cons of video game collecting, especially retro game collecting. But in order to actually understand that, we need to take a few steps back from eBay and talk about Funcoland and what happened with that whole industry. Funcoland was acquired by Barnes & Noble in the year 2000. And in late December 2000, it was renamed GameStop in anticipation of holding an initial public offering for the company. A couple years later, Barnes & Noble completed the partial IPO of GameStop, and then in 2004, Barnes & Noble distributed its remaining stock of GameStop to Barnes & Noble shareholders, making GameStop a fully independent corporation. So while I feel like eBay was the ultimate downfall of the video game collecting industry, it kinda got its start with Barnes & Noble turning Funcoland into GameStop. These stores had massive inventories of these used games and had the power to price them at whatever they wanted. They could set the market for the entire used game industry. And while Funcoland was around in the 90s selling games for pennies on the dollar, I mean, you could get Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for like 20 cents, Super Mario Bros. Duck Hunt was like 4 cents, and they had stacks of them there. People would just bring their games in and sell them for whatever they gave them. You'd get a penny for Super Mario Bros. Duck Hunt, and people would just take it. They didn't care. There was no value in these games back then. But as time went on, these games started becoming more and more popular with the advent of new technologies like the internet becoming popular around the year 2000, along with YouTube and gaming channels talking about these retro games, getting people excited about them, and reigniting a ton of passion for these old games and the childhood of all these people that grew up with them. This topic is a loaded conversation, and I'm not going to fit everything into this video right here, but I want to hit on some main points as to why I feel like eBay is the ultimate source of the problem with the used game market. The vast majority of US users were not on eBay until late 2001, 2002. Many people didn't even know what it was back then. But as time has gone on, it's created a quasi-domino effect in the value of used games. Instead of going to yard sales or giving them away at Goodwill, people wouldn't waste their time going to Funcoland because they wouldn't get any money for them. There was no value in any of these games. But because Barnes & Noble bought Funco, turned it into GameStop, removed all the old retro games back in the day from their catalog so they were no longer selling them anymore, there was no market for these at that time. eBay was not only giving people a new outlet to sell their old games, but also at that time, there was no market for these games. So basically, eBay began to set the price all over again for what the used game market should be going for. But something a lot of people forget is that when eBay was first starting up, they had no fees. And then when they started getting big enough, they had to add in some fees to pay for their servers, pay for employees as they were growing. And as they started growing faster and faster into the new millennium of the 2000s, they started increasing their fees 20% or more when paired in with PayPal fees, and even more if you include shipping costs. So all of a sudden you got people selling games that should be worth 30 cents to 50 cents, adding in these fees and shipping costs, and all of a sudden the game becomes a $2.50, $3 game. By 2008, eBay had expanded worldwide, opening the floodgates to repros and counterfeit cartridges for retro video games that were worth anything. Pairing that with the fact that as years went by, the games just started creeping up in price slowly to getting to what we're at right now with them. The combination of the popularity of retro video games being at a seemingly all-time high right now, paired with the fact that they're able to get their hands on these games whenever they want at the click of a button, has created a slippery slope of rising prices faster than you'd ever seen before in the past. So why do I feel like eBay has ruined retro gaming? Well, the prices, like I said, are at an all-time high. Pairing that with the fact that you can get these games at the click of a mouse, it's ruined the idea of having any kind of adventure when you go out to yard sales or Goodwills. All these places that are reselling the old games are looking at eBay to see what the market price is selling for, instead of just selling them as stock to get rid of. And while supply and demand does set the prices for the open market, a lot of these stores that are selling things based off the eBay prices are doing them off the listing prices, not what they're selling for. And in a way, that's increasing the value of the games even more so, because they're selling them at their store for a higher price than what eBay is even selling them for. There are a ton of reasons why this is terrible for the entire game collecting community on the whole, but it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And the days of picking up an NES game at your local game store for 11 cents are long gone. But just because a game is selling for $50 on the NES doesn't mean it's a game that's worth $50. And especially when we talk about the really high price ones like Flintstones Dinosaur Peak, that is not worth $800 to $1,000. Are you crazy? Now, I understand it's because that game was made in extreme short supplies, but it goes back to the whole supply and demand thing and what the true value of these games actually should be. And I feel like without the slippery slope of GameStop eliminating their used games that they got from Funko way back in the day, and then eBay taking over the market and creating an entire new one, and then perpetually getting worse exponentially as time has gone on, has created a terrible environment for the entire retro game community. But I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this. I'm sure there are plenty of diverse opinions on this issue. Let me know in the comments section below, and as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good one.